insightful episode of Mindful Living with your host, Sana. Today, I have a truly special guest, actor and filmmaker Matt Drago, for all of you. Listeners, best known for his role as Fabian in Somewhere in Montana, Matt has built an impressive career in film, television, and even audio drama. From Disney's Counting Scars viral video to What Would Jesus Do? The journey continues, and Ridley Scott's Prophets of Science Fiction, Matt has made his mark in the industry. But his journey wasn't always smooth. Moving from Virginia to New York City to study acting, and then making the leap to Los Angeles took a lot of determination, resilience, and an undying passion for storytelling. And in today's episode of The Mindful Living, we'll take a deep dive behind the scenes of Somewhere in Montana, explore Matt's experiences as an actor and a producer, and we'll also discuss what it truly means to be a storyteller in Hollywood. So get ready for an inspiring and really interesting conversation filled with insights, challenges, maybe even a few surprises. So, Matt, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Pleasure to be here, Sana. Thank you so much for having me today.
That's great. That's really great, Matt. Okay, how did you get first, get involved with Somewhere in Montana? What attracted you or drew you to this project?
Well, I think it goes along with the theme of your show, right? It's a healthy mindset. It's a healthy mindset in attraction, and as a storyteller, you are constantly putting yourself on tape. You're constantly giving yourself, opportunities to succeed, but you don't have really much control at the end of the day because there's a lot of different factors at play. So I always tell people, just try to be the best version of you that you can be, and whatever that means to you. Because I do think that when you are in a state of being joyful about telling a good story, then people are attracted just by the the allure that you give to producers and directors and storytellers, that they want to collaborate with you, and that's what's so joyous about telling a story. So, for this one specifically, I was actually working in a restaurant, and I had a really great friend, Zuzu Weingart, who actually came across the script. She was originally from Montana, and in 2019 moved back there to start her own production company and move back with her family. And it was so sweet because when I was here, I remember, her not having an agent and me just trying to help her out. And so I got her involved with my agent. She remembered that. And yeah, and a couple of years later, she reached back out to me and she said, "Hey, my friend Brandon has this script. And every time I read one of the lead characters, I see your face." And it really was a humbling experience. Again, that healthy mindset that you give off to help other people. And, sometimes that comes back to you, right, in life. So it was just a really powerful moment for me that she thought of me. And so, in thinking of me, I asked her, "Well, how do I put myself on tape?" And so, I did, and a couple weeks went by because, again, Sana, you have to, give yourself, to the character and do your work as an actor, but then you have to do the hardest part, which is you have to let it go, because you don't have any control after that, and so I did. A month passed, I got a call, that I was gonna get a producer session. Producer session, for your listeners, is when you, basically meet with your director, your producer, and you just talk through, the different elements of the character. You talk through the different elements of the story. Again, you're relationship building, more than anything. You're showing what you can do as an actor, but you're also relationship building in the process. And so we were on a Zoom call just like this for about 45 minutes, and we talked through a lot of the different elements of the script. And honestly, I just found myself again in this mindset of just asking questions and being curious about the role and the project, because roles like this are what I've always dreamed of doing, telling stories that I felt like were bigger than myself, that could, lay out a healthy message for people to, to just kind of impact them in their lives. And so I found a lot of the conversation to be that, not necessarily running the scene. I think maybe we ran it once, maybe twice. And it was just this amazing back and forth of just being curious. Because again, my curiosity peaked very early on in this process. I actually read the script 3 times before I even put myself on tape for it. And so in doing that, it really did just show my allegiance to the role and to the project at large, and just being again that healthy collaborator in the journey. And then again, you have to let it go, right? So 3 or 4 more weeks passed, and Jared Brocksterman, my friend, the casting director, reached back out to me and told me that I had been granted the role. And I always say granted the role because I feel like, roles that you are meant to have will find you somehow. That's just the way I look at it in life. It's not a transactional thing. It's really a gift that you're being given in your life. And so when I was given that role, I was elated, of course. It was just a really joyous moment in my life. But the second that I hung up the phone, my first thought was, okay, well, now it's time to get to work. Because that's when you really have to earn the role. And that's when you really have to, again, have that healthy mindset of, okay, now I've gotten the role, but what can I do with it? And so it was just this incredible, moment in my life that I'll always be so grateful for.
Wow, that is that is so so beautiful, Matt. And uh, I think uh, your journey from your humble beginnings to New York City, and then collaborating, having found a great network, and taking the entire creative gift as a gift, actually, not something transactional, as you said. I think that, is kind of that passion which ignites and, sparks the creative side of the brain, and it connects with your heart and soul. So that's a really, really beautiful beginning to this conversation, Matt. So talking about mindfulness. So in filmmaking, collaboration is key. So how do you practice mindfulness when working with co-stars like Graham McTavish and Michelle Hurt?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sana. I mean, it really does come back to how you find inner peace and how you do your work as an actor. There is a lot of soul searching and mindfulness that goes into character building. Every actor does it differently. I really go into backstories. I love writing backstories for my character because, again, that's the foundation that you can draw your behavior from as an artist. It gives you less. To worry about when you're finally in a scene with someone like Graham or Michelle, because essentially what you've done is you've given yourself this just really firm, foundation to work off of. And so that's when the magic happens is that you don't even know what's going to happen. You're playing off of them and you're just in your element. And you've done so much work on, just what makes the character tick, what makes him alive. Remember, you're inhabiting this person's soul, their being. So whatever you need to do to get there is part of really the joy of acting and the joy of storytelling is really just putting yourself there. And every actor does it a little bit different. For this role specifically, I lost 25 pounds. I did it in a very healthy way. I hired a nutritionalist. A shout out to Nathan and Jennifer DeTracy with my friend who also is an actor, Nathan Reed, who got me in touch with them. And we did, 5 little meals a day and a lot of cardio. I like to drink my protein shakes, but I didn't lift weights for about 3.5 months because I just wanted to lean out. And the reason I did that as part of my kind of method acting process, which is a very great method, by the way, for actors to dive into. You hear the bad parts of it, but there are actually a lot of really wonderful parts. Is I wanted to find the body of Fabian and felt like I was really inside his body and his character. And in doing that, I felt like his character was so wired. He was so, high strung in the beginning because again, he's fighting for his dream. That I felt like he was forgetting to take care of himself. He was skipping meals. He was really driven. And so in that, I felt like, losing this 25 pounds for the role gave me the ability to really feel like I was in his mindset and in his being when I arrived on set. And, yeah, it's just, again, when you're in production, to answer your question in terms of having that mindset, I actually, come from a dojo. I come from a background in karate. I grew up, uh, meditating and being with my dad and going to zendos and finding that inner peace and that healthy mindset. And so when I was on set, I was in Montana, Sana, and I mean, Montana is just the most beautiful, place in the world and just a lovely place to tell a great story. So it was pretty easy, just to look over the mountains or, the Flathead Lake of Polson, Montana, and just meditate and just really give myself the last moments before I gave away a scene to really just be in my state of inner peace. That way I knew I could deliver a great product to my fellow actors, to the crew, and to the film at large.
That that sounds so passionate. And I think when you mentioned about Montana, I think Montana itself is a kind of a character. It itself has
Absolutely.
story to it. So the way you also collaborated with Montana with mindfulness and healthy mindset, I think that is really really brilliant. That is
You hit it on the head too, because Brandon Smith, the writer and the director, even said that Montana is a character in this film. It's a character of freedom, and the way that he sees Montana is that, just really at peace, feeling that you get when you take a moment to, just look at the mountains or look at the sun go down or, look at the water and just be at peace. And he really wanted to make sure of that in the film. And that's the one thing I always say is that your cinematographer is such a big part of the production. AJ Young is incredible, and he got these anamorphic lenses to make sure that he was taking in so much of that Montana skyline, and it really did become a major part of the character, not only on screen, but believe it or not, off screen, because the cast and crew, we'd go on hikes together. We would go to our meals together overlooking the water. A lot of what you see in the film is because of the relationships that we developed off screen. And obviously, that all started somewhere in Montana.
wow. I think that automatically, organically flows down into the work. Lovely.
Absolutely.
But um, independent films or indie films, as we call them, they can be stressful because there's lot uh, going behind the scene. Uh, what mindfulness practices help you manage the pressures of production? If we uh, take it towards a more practical angle of the conversation, I mean, how did you maintain your balance between your creative vision and then the realities of the industry?
Another beautiful question. I mean, again, it comes down to process. There is pressure in film in that, and especially independent film, to your point, that you don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of moving parts in film. There's a lot of different masters of craft, but you don't have the big budget, so you can't rely on extra days. You can't rely on extra takes. And this is a role that I had prepared over a year and a half for. And so there is innate pressure in that because, again, when you get to that moment where you're giving that scene away for the final time, you really do, you can put pressure on yourself. But the ways that I find to not do that is to just really remain in the joy of it and the joy of I get to do this today. I get to be an actor. I get to tell a great story. I also do something the night before, which is even though I've been living with the script, and in this case for, almost 2 years at this point, I like to give it one more, once over, go back to the page, go back to the words, really, really concentrate on all the work that I've done and almost pay honor to that, and pay homage to it by just giving it one more look over and just seeing if there's anything last minute because again, your creative juices are at their peak at that point because you're about to really give birth to the scene, right? And it will live on forever once you give it away. So I go through it one more time just to see if there's anything, not that I've missed, but that I can glean from when I come to set the next day. And sometimes I'll make a little note. Sometimes I'll make a little voice memo. Sometimes I'll write a little monologue. There's one scene that I have with Frank, the producer of the film, and I created this massive backstory the night before because I felt like we really did have this backstory. He was the first person that took a shot on Fabian, and so I wrote him a backstory about, how we used to be in New York City together and how we were, struggling together. And it was just this like kind of monologue that actually Brandon let me even perform on set. And even though it didn't make it to the film, you can feel it in the words that he wrote because it was kind of the introduction to kind of get me into that moment. So there was just a massive amount of collaboration. And I really do. It starts and ends a lot of time with your leader, and that's your director, and that's Brandon. And he created such an incredible ecosystem and a safety net for all of us to thrive in. And so I knew I was safe. I knew I was well protected. And I knew that I could be creative and bring myself to the project. And when you have that in a film, you can just be the best creative self that you can be. And you will constantly be in a state of a healthy mindset and, just a joyful practice in loving what you do in storytelling.
Mm. Wow, wow. That is really amazing, Matt. Really amazing. Also, when we talk about method acting, you are kind of living the character 24/7. And of course, there are there is so much good and bad to that attached to that. So your character in somewhere in Montana, it's in conflict with a rancher. So how did you ensure you stayed mentally and emotionally grounded while navigating such an intense dynamic? Because it's really, I mean, I cannot even imagine. It's so difficult. You get into a very intense character or maybe an intense scene, and then you flip back to your normal mental state. So how did you do that?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. I mean, it really comes back to the fact that, you let different parts of the character seep in through you. And Fabian, to be perfectly honest, is the first character that I've ever fallen in love with.
Oh,
I love Fabian and I love what he stands for. I
yes.
love that he's passionate. I love that he fights for his crew and his cast and that he'll go down with his own ship. I love that he is proud of being a filmmaker and telling stories that are bigger than himself. And as you can probably tell from our interview today, it's no different than me, right? So there are parts of a character that you fall in love with that you hold on to. You also, in that same regard, have to remember that you're Matt, and the ways to do that are just sometimes to flip the switch, right? And have those conversations with Graham or Michelle that are completely out of character and getting back to maybe something that you're looking forward to in your real life. Maybe talking about something that brings you joy, right? Your family, things that are going on in your life that aren't necessarily acting or film related. And so I feel like if you can do that, it's very easy to keep the balance and that healthy mindset to really be able to do your craft through method acting, but also be able to maintain your personal commitment to yourself at the same time.
Wow, wow. And when you talk about your love with Fabian, your character in Summer in Montana. So have you ever, or maybe what would you do in a scenario where you are handed a character which is completely in opposite to what you would love, or maybe you are not aligned with the values or the background or something with that character? I mean, would you do it just for the sake of the love of acting, or I mean, what would you be? What would be your perspective on that?
You're asking all the great questions today, and there are some characters that hit closer to home, like Fabian, and then there are others that, right, like what happens if you're playing like a serial killer or somebody that like is not you, right? have to find parts of the character, and really, like, I go back to backstories. You have to find why the character behaves in the way that they behave, and then you start to understand the character even if it's somebody that you aren't in real life, right? So, it really just goes back to your process as an actor and finding uniquely what your process is. I was very lucky early on that when I moved to New York City, I studied with the great Terry Schreiber. Terry he's had a studio on 26th Street for decades and decades. And he's a lover of actors. But what I loved so much about him is he studied so many different practices of, acting methods, whether it be Stanislavski, Strasberg, Meisner. I've even done kabuki training, which is body work, right, to find out how the character behaves within their body. And as you can see, that's why I probably lost 25 pounds for the role because it just didn't feel right to me. And so, in studying different practices of how to get there, as a storyteller, as an actor, it's given me different methods to go about different characters. Where if I need to, we'll say, for lack of a better word, reach for a character that maybe isn't in my scope as Matt, because he's so vastly different than me, I'll find ways to connect with him. I'll find ways to understand him because, again, you have to understand your character. You have to understand, even if he is worst case scenario, like a serial killer, why he's doing what he's doing, what, mental illness he's dealing with that makes him, act the way he does. So the ways that you do that can change character by character. I feel like for Fabian, I was able to go a little bit more method because of how much closer he was to me in terms of scope, in terms of how I align with him. And so I really was able to really dive into method acting for this one. But then there are other roles where maybe I dive into different practices and I find a different mindset or a different process to be able to dive into those characters.
Wow, that's beautiful, and I think this is so many layers at the same time. It's really profound, Matt. So, of course, if our listeners would wish to check out somewhere in Montana, connect with you, and maybe your future projects, your upcoming journey in this industry, how they can do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sana, for having me on your show. This has been a wonderful conversation. To connect with me, the best way is on my Instagram. I keep it simple. It's at Matt Drago, Mattdrago, Mattdrago. From there, I've got a link tree. It's got my websites, both for my acting, mattdrago.com, and my production company, dragonhunterproductions.com. It's also got my IMDb if you want to check out my past and future projects and all of my other social media channels. So go to Matt Drago, at Matt Drago on Instagram. Give me a follow there, and I'll keep you posted with all of the updates and happenings, not only in my career, but in my life, because they're one and the same, right? It's all part of the same journey, and you'll be in the know for everything that's happening with somewhere in Montana and beyond.
Lovely, lovely. And when can we catch up somewhere in Montana and theaters?
Right now, it is limited a release in America, in the Midwest. We're hoping to get an expansion in theaters in the next couple weeks. And then eventually it will go to streaming and video on demand. And I will post all those updates when that happens on my Instagram.
Lovely, lovely. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And Matt, thank you so much for this enlightening conversation. Your journey from knowing you wanted to be an actor at such a young age to now making your mark in Hollywood. I think it's truly, truly inspiring. And there's so many lessons to take away, so many stuff to learn from your journey for our listeners. So thank you so much.
Thanks again, Sana. This has been an inspiring conversation for me too. And I thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Lovely, lovely. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us. Um, I encourage all of you to check out the show notes if you wish to connect with Matt and check out somewhere in Montana, and also the behind the scenes stories, his insights, his journey, everything. So And also stay tuned for more such enriching conversations on mindful living with Sana. Until next time, stay mindful and keep chasing your dreams. Thank you.